Welcome to Thriving Tribesmen. My name is Kuri, your host, and I'm excited to be making this episode. Should I feel guilty for wanting more sex with my wife? And this is a response to a Reddit post. And this guy's post really broke my heart. And I'll just read a little bit about it, and then we'll just respond as and when we go through it. So he says, my wife and I have been married for 25 years. She went through menopause several years ago. And since then, she has zero desire for sex. When we do have sex, I really enjoy making her feel good. And she feels she's able to orgasm about 80% of the time with his fingers. So he goes on to talk about how good he is with the sex. So there's a bit of that. But at the same time, there is something that I need to point out about this, where he says he wants her to feel incredible and love it. So there's this part where there's a lack of sex, and this lack of sex again when he talks about the menopause. Usually when women go through menopause, there is a massive decline in testosterone production within the woman, which then spontaneous desire that really just gets depleted and not so. You got to have mechanism within the relationship to cause attraction, or at least a a mindset for her to want to contribute within the relationship from a sexual standpoint. So how she sees sex is very important as in when she goes through menopause, and that's massively difficult for both of you when she's going through menopause. So that in itself is a massive challenge. So how you go through menopause is just as important. It's to rediscovering and reframing sex. In fact, I got a somebody who was a client and is now a very good friend of mine. Him and his partner, the his partner decided that she wanted to go and have surgery, or to make things a little bit tighter down there. And after the surgery, it's going to be at least 3 months before they actually have sex. And we're talking about this, like, what does this mean for the relationship? She's got some concerns about that. Okay, if we're not having sex, then what does that mean? Does that alter our relationship? So they had to have a conversation around this. And one of the conversation bits about the conversation was, we now have an opportunity to evolve as a relationship and see other ways of connecting without penetration. So what does that mean? Does that mean we explore toys? Does it mean we explore certain things that we can connect on? Because all of a sudden you're not prioritizing orgasm, you're not prioritizing connection, and it was a good interaction. And like rightly so, this conversation for that woman was probably the best conversation she's ever had in terms of a relationship, because all of a sudden she probably was made to feel like a piece of meat from prior partners. But for this first time, this guy was there to actually make it feel like that connection is more important than anything. So it changed the dynamic of how she looks at the relationship. So when they reintroduce penetration within that relationship, it has got so much more value to the relationship. In fact, it adds so much more to the relationship. So really, when you're going through menopause, it then comes down to, how are you going through that? Are you taking does he take the victim mindset and say, look, I'm having these hot flashes, and I'm having these difficulty sleeping, and what all these other things, that symptoms that they have during menopause, and say, look, I'm this victim, so because I'm going through this, I hate everybody, I hate you, I don't want to be close to you, I'm not going to put any effort in the relationship. That again can be obviously destructive. So, and again, with relationships, it's a waste when you go through a day when you're not adding towards when you're not adding to it, and it's like a campfire type thing, that if you stop adding wood to it or fuel to it, at some point it's going to die out. And menopause can be that thing where people decide, I'm not going to add to the relationship because I've got this feeling, I've got this horrible thing going on with my body, so therefore I'm just sort of going to coast through the relationship. So without going down that rabbit hole, yeah, definitely there is a low libido. So um, now that things are back online, uh, she seems to have not. She's got resistance to coming back online, and says, he tries to impress. In fact, 80% of the times when they do have sex, she has an orgasm, and he loves doing that. There's one thing to be said about that, is that we talked about this within a few episodes ago, that there's a thing called sex to impress. When you most guys, they go through a dry spell or go through a place where they're consistently being rejected, and then when the opportunity comes, instead of focusing on the connection of the sex act, they focus on really trying to give it the best orgasm in order to try and remind her that this is how good you can feel. And while she will only see the orgasm and not want to come back, because again, she can orgasm for herself. The value here should be, is she feeling validated? Is she feeling the sense of connection? And that, if when you focus on that, she's going to want to come back to it. So this is a very important distinction that you guys need to actually know and see, that it's very important for you guys to really, when that opportunity comes, that you slow things down. You actually taking time to get her to feel comfortable. She's not in her head thinking that, okay, I got bills to pay, I got dishes to do, I got, try and slow things down so that she's within that moment and she's feeling everything. And more importantly, if she cannot shut down her mind and be present to what you guys are doing, you should be prepared to walk away, even though it's been 6 or 7 months or 10 months or even 2 years without anything. You should be prepared to walk away and say, you know what, I can see that you're not into it. Therefore, it's okay if let's not do it. And really, that point there, it's actually showing that there's that sense of walking away will make you more attractive than actually plowing through. So it's very, very important to do this, and especially when she's offering up duty sex, because when it is duty sex, um, it's something that is very, very bad, because whenever there's duty sex or PT sex, whichever way you want to look at it, every time you do it, you're compounding on the problem. I'll say that again. Every time you have duty sex and PT sex or PT sex, you are compounding on the problem. You are compounding on the negative experience around sex. So therefore, she's most likely going to put up more resistance the next time you try and get her to it. So it's very, very important that you actually start slowing things down, not rushing into anything, especially when it comes to that the opportunity is presented with terms of sex. Really, really focus on, how do I make her feel validated? How do I make her feel uh, a sense of connection? How do I make her feel that this is not just about me getting off and me just getting an orgasm? That's not what it is. It's more than that. And then when you can do that, when you can convey that message, it makes it more collaborative. It makes it more want her to want to come back to it, because that's when she feels a sense of connection. Like right now, she's craving that more than anything, because as you know, most people on social media, or most people are not doing anything where they are interacting with people face to face, and people are craving for real connection. And when you can give her that and be that source, the one number one source for her, to give her that connection, then she would most likely will start changing the value in terms of how she approaches the relationship. So I wrote some notes here and some things I wanted to point out, which are things that are really important. That it goes on to talk about that whenever they talk about it, and in terms of the lack of sex and so on, she really starts shaming him, and or she makes him feel bad. And again, the shaming, you have to actually understand why she's shaming him. It's not the sense, it's more about projection. So she feels uncomfortable about sex, she feels the discomfort, and again, that discomfort may come from him as well. He's contributing to that discomfort, but she doesn't understand why she feels uncomfortable. And then because she does feels uncomfortable, instead of saying, you know what, I feel uncomfortable because whatever reason she feels uncomfortable, she'll look at it and just say, well, you're being inconsiderate because I feel uncomfortable and you keep pestering me about this. So there's something wrong with you because you just keep asking for sex, which is a weird way of looking at things, because really that's his way of connecting. And if she truly loved him, she would actually listen and say, you know what, let's see how we can figure this out. But the fact that she's sort of uh, dismissive, it just tells you that, yeah, she doesn't know how to deal with it, she doesn't know how to fix it. So because she doesn't know how to deal with it or fix it, it's easier to blame somebody else so that you don't take responsibility to fix it. So therefore, this is why she's shaming him, so that it makes it difficult for him to bring up the topic. And that's the reason, the rationalization of why people sort of shame you or blame you in that sense, so that you don't feel comfortable bringing it up again. So again, it's a tactic that you have to be aware of that is going to happen. And when it comes to how do you resolve it, is that you need to stop giving a validation. Now, within a relationship, there's going to be consistency of what that person wanting validation. For example, with my wife, generally I might say I love you to her at least 3 or 4 times per day, and she needs it. If I go 3 or 4 days without saying it, or giving a kiss, or giving a hug, or just do, she will feel really uncomfortable, and she will feel a sense of distance within the relationship. She feels she needs that. Uh, in the equivalent of this within a sexless relationship is me turning around and saying, you know what, I gave you a hug on Monday and I told you I love you on Monday. So therefore, uh, it's no different from now. Nothing has changed. You should know that, you know. And again, she will probably not take that very lightly. She'll be like, well, I still need to hear that. And that's those are the sort of dynamics that most people would have within a relationship. So she already has mechanisms that make her feel validated and so on. And one of the validations that she will get is for you to have sexual responses to some of the things. So, for example, if you walked in and she was getting changed, sometimes most guys would, give a opportunity to make a compliment or a chance to say a sexual innuendo or whatever. Most of the times it's better just not to do anything and be non-reactive. The more you are non-reactive around sexual situations where she feels validated, we call it the attraction gap. So by removing those validations, because sometimes you will be rejecting you from physical sex, but she will want you to chase sexually, and removing that chasing of sexual validation for her is very important, because all of a sudden when you remove it, she's going to want it back. And the more she wants it back, the more you hold back. And then she has to go to the point of physical to actually get confirmation that she's still sexy. And she's going to need that. It's like same as breathing. So, but then you're over validating. If you're over validating, then she's definitely not going to want it. And the best example for this is that we've got a cat. And whenever we play with a toy, if I'm playing with the toy and sort of flicking it, for example, it's like a feather toy, and when I'm flicking it, she goes nuts trying to grab this toy and play with it, and she just wants to play with it and wants to chase with it. If I take this toy and then just give it to her, she's not interested whatsoever. So you over give yourself to the point where there's less value in actually you within that relationship, because sexually you're there, but you, by the time you remove it, it creates this real gap. And then she wants to fill it with whatever, so she's going to have to push as hard as she can, to the point of physically pushing herself onto you in order for you to get it. So this is where I'm going to knock it on the head for this. If you want to know how to do the attraction gap in more detail, you can go to the Thriving Tribesmen website, and the website is in the link in the description below. You should be able to copy and paste it. I don't know if the actual podcast thing will allow you to have links, but it's links to the website. But I'm pretty sure that when you go there, there's a free training that's going to take you through what we call the attraction into seduction playbook, and it's going to be taking you through the reignited men, the thriving tribesman process, where how you change your relationship from sexless to sexual success with record time. So thank you very much. I'll be seeing you soon. Take care. Oh God, I'm trying to come off, and my laptop is not allowing me to come off.